Hello and welcome to the finals of the World Championship in Through the Ages. We just finished our semi-finals coverage and now already the first game of the finals has finished, which of course we would like to take a look at. We started with over 1,000 players, I think already at the end of last year, but now we are down to the final 4 players and it will be decided in this last stage, which will be the new world champion. Sadly, those finals have been overshadowed by an unsportsmanlike behavior by one of the players, but I won't say anything more to that right now. I first want to wait for a response from Payada and CGE, so the tournament organizers, and maybe also by the player in question, so I won't say anything more to that. 4-player games that we are taking a look at are not affected by that behavior. So yeah, let's just take a look at those 4-player games and see that high-level gameplay. And then after those games have finished and we have maybe some responses, I will then yeah, say more to that. But those of you who are on the Discord channel, of course, already know what has happened exactly. Alright, now before we are taking a look at the first 4-player game, let's maybe do a very quick introduction of the 4 players and take a look at the rating. Alright, so here we have the 4 players that are in the finals, and the one that you maybe know the least about so far, because he didn't need to play in the semi-finals, is A440. He was able to win all of his upper bracket groups and with that was directly qualified for the finals, so he had a really strong run. And he's also a player who is playing the game already for quite long, because actually back in 2020, when I joined the International Championship, in the season before, he won the Grandmaster division with a very strong amount of points, but then he dropped out of the tournament, maybe wanted to do something different with his time, and so I didn't really experience him playing then. I saw some games from the Transcontinental Ladder from him, where he's played for a while, still on a very high level, but when he played back then, already quite some time ago, was certainly one of the top players. Then he joined already for the last year's edition of the World Championship and had a solid run there, made it to stage 6, but not as great of a run as he did this year, with being the one player who won all of his groups so far, and also his strong performances are reflected in his rating. He's at the 10th position, so just in the top 10 of the clicker rating, has a very high rating, and also I think he has an interesting playstyle. Some games that I've seen from him, he went really for some crazy military stuff. We of course know Chengisip as a player who is known for his military playstyle, but some things that I've seen from A440 were even crazier at times. So yeah, we'll be interested to see if maybe that will also be the case in now some of those final games. And then the introduction to the other players we can maybe do relatively quickly, as you have seen all of them already in the semifinals coverage. We have Eepogi, who is playing on a very high level over the last year, managed to go to the Grandmaster division in both International Intermezzo Championship, and now made it to the finals of this tournament, is also at the 20th position in the Clicker rating. And then we have 2 players where it was maybe a bit more of a surprise that they made it to the finals. We have Kyshantry, who is definitely a familiar name, has been playing in different tournaments, but maybe hasn't had a very outstanding result in a tournament so far, at least not that I know of. So probably his biggest achievement so far, playing now in the finals. Nonetheless, he is at the 51st position in the rating, and with that, definitely has a very solid rating. And then we have Wanderlust, who is playing for the first time now in the World Championship, and also I didn't really know him from other tournaments, but he had a great run so far in the tournament. Also, for example, in the Wimbledon tournament that is ongoing, he is still now in the quarterfinals, and with that also, of course, it will be interesting to see what we can expect from him in the finals. Alright, and maybe we can also very quickly take a look at the 4-player ratings. Oh, and we can actually see A440, maybe a bit of a 4-player specialist, is actually the 3rd highest rated player in the player count. Also Eepogi being even better in that, while Wanderlust and kyshantry maybe a little bit worse in 4-player games. So according to the rating in the 4-player games that we are taking a look at, A440 and Eepogi might be the favorite players, or the favorites. Alright, now without further ado, let's take a look at the first 4-player game from the finals of the World Championship in Through the Ages. Like in the semifinals, I haven't taken a look at this game yet, so all that we are seeing now will be a surprise for me. And first of all, we can quickly check out the leaders and wonders that are in the game. We have Sid Meier, Steve Jobs as some lab leaders. We have Pierre, there is the internet together with Pierre and Sid Meier. We have Chaplin, Marlene Dietrich, no Fleming and no Hollywood though. We have the space flight. We have both the Red Cross and the Manhattan Project, Churchill and Gandhi for the military. We have Ocean Liner Service and Maria Theresa. We have the Suez Canal but no James Cook. We have all of the 3 military action leaders in H2, Antoni Gaudi as a culture leader, Newton and Nobel as some strong science leaders. We have 1 military action leader in H1 with Jan Žižka, Nostradamus to help with the strength, Eleanor Columbus, also Isabella could work nicely for a colonization game. We have Michelangelo together with St. Peter's Basilica, and Saladin is a very solid leader. We have Universitas but no Silk Road, Great Wall but no Imici Castle. We have both of the Happy Face solution wonders with St. Peter's Basilica and Forbidden City. Alright, then we will take a look at the game, and A440 is playing in the first position. He has some leaders to choose from, goes with Aristotle, which I think should be a fine decision. Romea, I think, can also be quite strong in 4-player games, but when we take a look at the wonders, Pyramids will be taken away, Hanging Gardens, not really an ideal choice with Hanging Gardens, so I think Aristotle should be fine. Eepogi is then willing to pay 2 civil actions for the Pyramids, giving kyshantry maybe the option to just go for a leader and 2 yellow cards now. He goes for Alex, doesn't want to gamble on Homer with not knowing what wonder he will be getting. So just goes for Alex, gets 2 yellow cards together with him, which I think is fine. And then Wanderlust goes for Sun Tzu, actually without getting any yellow card. Maybe Homer plus a yellow card could have been fine. But yeah, he is willing to go for Sun Tzu, could maybe set up a colonization game. There's a chance that he will get the Colossus or Colosseum together with Sun Tzu. And now it's A440's turn. Actually, only 1 wonder comes out of the deck, so 2 wonders stay in the deck. A440 has no wonder to choose from for 1 civil action, but he's not willing to pay 2 civil actions for 1, is potentially willing to miss out on an HA wonder, but with having Aristotle and some additional science, I think that can be fine. Instead, he just goes for some normal stuff and takes the urban growth with his last civil action. Then it's Eepogi's turn. He went for the Pyramids. Cleopatra is the only leader available for him. Let's see if he will use her resources to build a lab or the first step of the Pyramids, or if he's just even building a mine to then start using her bonus at the following turns. But he starts with the lab, gets the science production going, and at the next turn can then maybe decide whether he just wants to start working on the Pyramids or if he wants to delay using her ability for 1 turn and gets the mine going. Kyshantry uses the rich land to build a 3rd mine, increases his population, goes for Alex, goes for the Colossus, which is a very solid wonder, and also giving Wanderlust, who has gone for Sun Tzu. The Colossus could potentially backfire, and with Sun Tzu maybe there will be some events seeded relatively quickly. Wanderlust is electing Sun Tzu now, builds the 3rd mine, takes the iron, so has the first copy of iron and can maybe start investing into that in 2 turns or something. Does not take the Engineering Genius. A440 takes this early copy of Code of Laws. I think with having Aristotle, that is just a very nice technology to get. He also takes the Engineering Genius. He could still actually take the Hanging Gardens now, but there's also a Great Wall coming down the road, which of course then again could be taken by Wanderlust, so it will be an interesting choice now for him. Is he willing to commit to the Hanging Gardens, even maybe at the cost of building that 2nd lab, or is he just waiting for an H1 wonder? I think it could be fine for him to wait for an H1 wonder. On the other hand, Hanging Gardens, especially if you are trying to go for a bit of a military gameplay, can actually be quite a useful wonder. But he goes for the 2nd lab, wants to get the science production started a bit quicker, and at the next turn, if he takes the technology, can maybe already go for Code of Laws. Eepogi delays the 3rd mine for a little bit longer, builds a step of the Pyramids, takes this copy of iron, maybe can build an iron mine directly at some point. Ooh. And very interestingly, he actually takes a Patriotism A here. I mean, I guess he has to do something with his last civil action. He could have increased his population, maybe having the theology as a happy face solution. There's Pierre, of course, in the game, taking the urban growth. So that's a very interesting choice. I mean, also he doesn't take the knights with Sun Tzu being in the game. So some interesting choices here, especially with the patriotism, but of course now that he hasn't gotten a copy of Knights, maybe that additional military action could turn out to be quite helpful for him at some point. So let's see if he finds a nice use case for that one. Kyshantry uses Alex, builds the second lab, increases his population, takes this copy of Knights. That just seems like a very solid and straightforward turn. Then Wanderlust seeds, opens the development of warfare. He doesn't have a free population, reveals the heavy cavalry, so maybe he doesn't need it for that one. There's also no Genghis Khan in the game. All of the other players, actually A440 also doesn't have a free pop, but Eepogi and Kyshantry can take the free warrior if they like to. Then Wanderlust takes this copy of Knights for one civil action, which I think makes sense. Builds the second lab, maybe if the right development is revealed, can go already for the iron at the next turn and then just plays its civil action efficiently, increases his population. Maybe with his plans of going for a heavy cavalry tactic, the Great Wall isn't really the best wonder to get. That gives A440 the chance to go for the Great Wall, and I would not be surprised if he would go for that, but first of all he gets out of corruption by going for an alchemy upgrade, gets some economy going, and then he will go for the Great Wall. Maybe at the next turn he can then go for Code of Laws, and I think it's not a bad setup for him, getting some economy now, but also having some good military potential for later with the Great Wall. Eepogi again being willing to delay his mine for a while longer, but maybe at some point as said can build an iron mine directly, takes the breakthrough. The swordsman has missed out on the knights, so maybe having swordsman could be important, and then increases his population. Kyshantry takes the last copy of iron, so A440 will be the player who is playing without iron. Kyshantry then goes for the iron, plays the cultural heritage, thanks to that it has enough science, goes for an upgrade and just gets a bit of economy going. Wanderlust seeds and the development of religion is revealed. He has a free population to take advantage of that. Kyshantry has none. A440 again has none, but Eepogi can take the free religion if he likes to. Wanderlust interestingly goes for the Forbidden City this turn, which I think can be a very solid wonder. Probably he wants to have a wonder at some point. Maybe for him it would even be better if the development of religion would have stayed in the deck. I mean, I guess two opponents can't take it, so it's probably still nice for the culture production, but with the Forbidden City he might not need a happy face in the near future. And then he builds a step, takes the reserves, with that can maybe finish the Forbidden City potentially already at the next turn. Doesn't take the Monarchy, which can be a fine card to have with the Forbidden City, but he also doesn't have the most science, maybe wants to go for Iron and Knights. A440 offers an open borders agreement to Kyshantry. Both of them are getting an additional military action. Kyshantry, I mean, will get the Colossus at some point. But now all of the opponents have two civil actions for now. Offering it to Sun Tzu can be potentially quite dangerous. So now I think offering it to Kyshantry is fine here. A440 then takes the Monarchy, scores an additional science with Aristotle that he can use to develop the Code of Laws already this turn. Is now at 5 civil actions, increases his population, is willing to go for one more lab upgrade, could have maybe also started working the Great Wall and then increasing his population another time to get out of corruption. Or maybe just increasing population, taking the urban growth, but he's maybe confident that he will finish that still in time, and the event deck hasn't moving quickly so far. Also he is taking Columbus now. There's a Suez Canal. Aristotle is a leader that you can nicely keep until the end of the age, and then especially if he has already drawn a colony, Columbus can turn out to be a very nice transitional leader and sets himself up for Suez Canal as well. Eepogi seeds, opens the development of settlement. He can take the free religion, will go for Saladin this turn, doesn't really have any projects any longer for Cleo's resources, so I think switching the leader now is fine. Could have gone for Nostradamus if he was maybe a bit afraid how his military situation will be going, but he interestingly will go for the theocracy here, and with having Saladin and the pyramids, that will be a fine government for him, I think, and then maybe it's also better to have the additional civil action from Saladin than having Nostradamus, even though of course Nostradamus is also a very strong leader to have. He then takes the breakthrough. Maybe if he gets some additional resources at the next turn he can build an iron mine directly finally. Kyshantry goes for Nostradamus now, elects him. Now it's especially nice for him that he has the third military action. Also he goes for the Code of Laws. Wanderlust plays the reserves for resources, could just finish the Forbidden City now, that's also what he will do. He could have also gone for some iron upgrades this turn, but maybe wants to get the civil action going first. I wouldn't be surprised to see him taking the patriotism here, maybe making sure that he can set up a heavy cavalry tactic relatively quickly, but also rich land frugality, or maybe even taking leader could be fine here. He goes for the rich land, maybe just wanting to get his mines upgrades going quicker, reveals the medieval army tactic, so now he also only needs one knight to fulfill the tactic. A440 increases his population, builds the 2 steps of the Great Wall that gets him out of corruption, takes a patriotism, and the frugality interestingly takes 2 yellow cards. Maybe doesn't want to have those technologies. I guess the printing press he doesn't really need. Maybe could have taken the cartography for 1 additional science. With Aristotle, especially with having Columbus in 1 colony already, maybe he could potentially set himself up for nice colonization games. It's interesting that he doesn't take the cartography, but both of those yellow cards I think can also turn out to be quite valuable for him. The patriotism will allow him to finish the Great Wall at the next turn while also being able to build a warrior, and the frugality might give him an additional population, so I think both of those yellow cards will be useful. He reveals the fighting band tactic. Eepogi seeds and opens the development of crafts, and now he finally got some additional resources out of the developments and can now build an iron mine directly. He has delayed his mines, not sure how feasible that was, but he had some additional resources from Clio, had his additional civil action set up very quickly, and now at least he can save his civil action by building an iron mine directly, and now he is actually using the patriotism A to build an additional warrior and go up to 4 strength. Maybe there's a chance that the event deck could flip before his next turn. Also he has the legion tactic, so actually goes up to 6 strength now. Kyshantry seeds and opens the development of trade routes. He goes for an upgrade to iron mines, finishes the Colossus, so it's now some strong resource production, also a fine strength situation with the Colossus and Nostradamus, then increases his population to get out of corruption. Wanderlust doesn't seed, goes for the iron, can go for 2 upgrades, and then maybe at the next turn start going for knights. There's maybe a small chance that he could get hit by strength events before his next turn. By the way, what leaders are there left for Wanderlust? Jan Shishka and Eleanor both I think could be fine. Eleanor is a transitional leader. Jan Shishka, of course, with this upgraded tactic has a lot of potential. Fortunately for Wanderlust, those 2 leaders are very late. A440 seeds. The event deck is now flipped. The development of planning is revealed. The options of that are politics, agriculture, and markets. And now when we take a look at the flipped event deck, yellow and blue have seeded 2 events, so Eepogi and Wanderlust, the other ones have seeded 1. And it looks like A440 took the development of markets, develops the monarchy, has now a fine amount of civil and military actions, finishes the Great Wall, takes the knights, scoring another science with Aristotle, being able to maybe use the upgraded medieval army tactic, takes the bread and circuses for Pierre, so 2 more nice technologies to have, 2 more science scored with Aristotle, then switches to Columbus as the age will end before his next turn, increases his population with the frugality, actually builds 2 warriors for now, making him the strongest. Maybe he can still use the knights nicely and build 2 of them relatively soon, especially if he has a colony that gives him even more population. Could even potentially, I think at the next turn he will have the ability to copy the medieval army tactic, and with the patriotism he could even, if he maybe gets some additional yellows from Columbus, could play patriotism, build 2 knights, copy the tactic, and then he would actually be very threatening. So let's see if he will be able to do something like this. Eepogi plays the reserves for resources, goes for 2 upgrades, has now his mines fully upgraded, goes for the swordsman, some upgrades, and then maybe he could potentially go for the St. Peter's Basilica or just increase population and then maybe take an alchemy or something, or bread and circuses. He actually takes the cultural heritage, so a completely different option, but he has a fine amount of civil actions and is low in science, so I think that's also a very fine pick for him. With going for those upgrades, he's the strongest for now. Now it's Kyshantry's turn. He offers a naval trade agreement to Wanderlust. Wanderlust gets 2 additional blue tokens, while Kyshantry gets an additional colonization force. Kyshantry then goes for the Code of Laws, is now in 5 civil actions, but now also relatively low in science. Maybe getting Universitas could be interesting for him at the next turn. However, he decides to go for the St. Peter's Basilica here, builds a religion, maybe he's potentially afraid of a rebellion, and also can maybe finish the St. Peter's Basilica at the next turn, and then he has his happy faces nicely covered. But he will be playing on low science, so that could potentially be a bit of an issue for him. He then plays the fighting band tactic, builds a warrior, and makes sure to get a bit more of additional strength. And very unfortunately for Wanderlust, the 2 leaders are actually literally the last 2 cards in the deck, so he will only be able to get one of them at the next turn, and who knows, maybe he has even still to pay 2 civil actions for them. So that's a bit unfortunate for him. He for now builds an additional farm. I guess he might now go for knights, builds 1, I guess at least, takes 2 yellow cards. Now he builds 1, it goes up to 6 strength. takes 2 yellow cards, can go for a cheap upgrade, and at some point with the additional farm can maybe make a nice use out of the frugality. Thanks to the Forbidden City, he will have happy population to work with, so he soon can go for more knights, and if he gets the Yanchushka, he can go for a very big amount of strength. Now H2 starts. It will be interesting to see whether A440 will use Columbus immediately and maybe even go for that big strength push that I mentioned. He doesn't use him for now, either hasn't a strong colony or maybe he just wants to leave himself open to drawing an H2 one. He will go for the Bread and Circuses this turn, builds one, takes the Engineering Genius one, maybe allowing him to go for Wander while still, even though he's on Bronze Mines. Plays the Patriotism, doesn't go for Knights, instead he just goes for another Warrior, putting him at 11 strength. And I guess he can't copy the tactic anyway. Of course, he has to wait another turn yet, because the age didn't end before Wanderlust turn, so that 2 knights play with copying the tactic wouldn't have been an option anyway. Eepogi will increase his population. He will go for the Universitas, which I think will be a very useful wonder for him, even though it's relatively late. Builds 2 stages of it, just plays it very civil action efficiently. There's also the first government form on the row. Kyshantry seeds and opens the rebellion. Even though he built a religion, he still gets hit by it, loses 2 civil actions, so not ideal for him. At least he has still just enough civil actions to finish the St. Peter's Basilica if he wants to, and that's also what he will do, getting him out of corruption. But a bit unfortunate for him that the rebellion was on top. After his turn, he probably would have been able to avoid the rebellion. Now it's Wanderlust's turn. He will go for his last upgrade to his mines, goes for Yanchushka, elects him, builds an additional knight, putting him at 11 strength, and then even takes the warfare, interestingly. Maybe just realizing that he has some big military potential, and if he draws the right cards in H2, maybe he can go for quite a threatening strength push with Yanchushka, and then drawing even more cards could be quite important. A440 still doesn't use Columbus. Instead, Seeds is the strongest at his turn, but there's no strength event revealed. Instead, a good harvest, which gives at the end Wanderlust 1 more food than all of his opponents. A440 takes the Swordsman, that gives him a cheap way to get some more strength going. He upgrades 1 warrior, that also gets him out of corruption, and then he just takes the breakthrough in the urban growth. I probably will make sure to draw 3 cards for Columbus, but also generally to maybe get some good events or tactics. Eepogi seeds, the Pestilence is revealed. He has a free population that he can lose. Kyshantry has one as well. Wanderlust doesn't. Maybe he can lose the warrior and build a 3rd knight or something, or one of his farms. And A440 has a free population, so not the worst Pestilence for most of the players. Eepogi then will finish the Universitas this turn, goes for the irrigation, starts going for some upgrades. In 2 turns will be able to increase his population, plays the cultural heritage, and actually takes the justice system, which will be a nice addition for his theocracy. He's actually willing to take the strength from Saladin here, otherwise he would be the weakest. I mean, he has seeded 2 events, so he might have some knowledge. Without some knowledge, I'm not sure if I would sacrifice the civil action here, but of course we don't know what for knowledge he has about the event deck. Kyshantry seeds. There's no strength event revealed, instead the strategic territory, which Eepogi is actually able to win. Maybe taking the strength was actually not about avoiding to be the weakest, but maybe rather being able to bid for a colony without being too much in danger of an aggression. So now he's actually able to win that colony, has 2 defense cards, gets a colony, and with that maybe has a chance to get the Suez Canal at some point. Kyshantry takes the constitutional monarchy, the breakthrough, maybe can plan on doing a revolution at some point, but for now he has corruption, so his position I think is a bit tricky, but at least he has some solid iron production. Who knows, maybe if he can do a revolution at the next turn, even though it might again mean corruption, he still then has, especially with doing the revolution with the breakthrough and having a solid amount of science afterwards, could still have a very solid position. He's willing to skip the Rifleman, which could be an important technology for him. Wanderlust seeds and opens the developed territory, so again another colony. This time Kyshantry is able to win it, sending just a warrior away, still not losing too much strength, and now also having a colony of his own, and I think the 3 additional science are actually very helpful for him. Now it's Wanderlust's turn. He will indeed lose a warrior and then takes the Ocean Liner service, and that's of course a very strong wonder to get early. He's low in science, has some good production, so even though it's very expensive, I think it makes sense for him to grab it. Now I think he might just increase his population and build another knight for Yanchushka. At least that's what I would expect. Yes, he will increase his population, not using the frugality for now. Builds another knight and is now the strongest with being at 15 strength. A440, again, not using Columbus, instead offering the international trade agreement to Kyshantry, getting an additional resource production, while Kyshantry gets an additional food production, giving the ocean liner service player additional food. I mean, Wanderlust has already 3 farms, so maybe that could have been fine. Eepogi has irrigation, so that might help him setting that being a long-term solution, so I guess it's fine. I think with that the open borders agreement that A440 and Kyshantry had got cancelled. A440 then goes for the selective breeding. He still needs to upgrade some parts of his economy and has maybe the chance to do so now. That also will help him getting out of corruption, will allow him to increase his population at the next turn. Takes the Engineering Genius with having both copies of Engineering Genius, even though he's on bronze mines. He might still nicely be able to go for a Wonder at some point. Who knows, maybe even the Kremlin on having that on top of the monarchy could be very interesting for him at the next turn. He goes for one more upgrade, is willing to miss out on some draws. It will be interesting to see when he will finally be able to use Columbus. Has discarded all of his H1 cards, so he doesn't have a backup colony in hand, or unless of course he has already an H2 colony that he's just waiting to use. Eepogi Seeds and the Raiders are revealed. So both Eepogi and Kyshantry lose a little bit of stuff, but both of them have iron production, so I don't think it's the biggest hit for them. Eepogi will then take the cavalryman, actually develops them, builds one, and copies the upgraded medieval army tactic. Is now at 15 strength, but might drop down to 13 if he's willing to take the civil action from Saladin, which he is. Also takes the rifleman, which could be a very important technology for Kyshantry, potentially also for Wanderlust, so is maybe doing some small denial here, but also setting himself up for H3 tactics. Kyshantry offering the naval trade agreement to Wanderlust. No, wait. Kyshantry cancelling the naval trade agreement that he already had with Wanderlust and doesn't want to have the additional colonization force any longer. He will do a revolution to constitutional monarchy this turn, and when we take a look at his position, we can already see why he cancelled that pact, because now he's exactly out of corruption, so cancelling that pact made it that he could now do this revolution without having corruption, and thanks to the developed territory that he won, which now also played a part in him being able to do this revolution without having corruption. Yes, even now with using the revolution without doing the revolution without a breakthrough, is still a fine amount of science left. Might be able to go for scientific methods at the next turn. Will pass on that selective breeding, but there's still another copy coming. Him not using breakthrough could be a sign of potentially Dark Ages coming. He's the Nostradamus player, so if it is in there, he has knowledge about it. Wanderlust Seeds, the foray is revealed. He and A440 will profit from that. That allows him now to finish the ocean liner service where he still build an additional unit. Even build 2 additional units, so Wanderlust could now get 2 additional population. I think he also made sure, no, he didn't take a food, but he can now increase his population twice and build a warrior and a knight. Let's see if he will do that, if he really goes for some big pressure here. He will increase his population, but he doesn't increase it a second time. He builds a knight, doesn't go for an additional warrior, instead wants to have the Republic, might be able to do a revolution at his next turn. Now finally A440 is using Columbus, has got the inhabited territory too, so certainly a very strong colony to get. And I thought already about it at a turn before. The Kremlin could be very interesting for A440, making it that he is not too much limited on his civil actions in H3. I think in 7 instead of 6 is a very big difference for H3, so he can take the Kremlin and I think can just finish it immediately. Gets a bit of a culture boost as well, and then takes Newton and elects him for some additional science production. At the next turn maybe he could potentially go for coal, and he is also going for one more upgrade to use the free military action that he's having and to remain one of the 2 strongest for now. Eepogi takes the rich land, the frugality, the revolutionary idea, actually destroys the farm in order to go for another cavalryman. Maybe he's expecting some strength events, or maybe he sees the potential to go for an aggression or something at the next turn. Is even taking the strength from Saladin. So let's see if he has a specific player in mind that he plans on potentially going for an aggression at the next turn. Otherwise, I don't know why he would use the strength of Saladin, if not maybe for the chance of getting an aggression. But destroying this farm is also a bit costly, so let's see if that will pay off for him. Kyshantry takes Napoleon. I mean, maybe Kyshantry was the player where Eepogi had some hopes against an aggression, but he goes for Napoleon now, develops the knights, builds a knight, goes for another knight, and actually copies the medieval army tactic, going up to 18 strength, being one of the 2 strongest now. This time he used a breakthrough, interestingly. Wanderlust this time just doing a revolution to Republic, which I think makes sense. He might now build an additional warrior for even more strength. Is going up to 21 strength now. A440 takes a copy of cannons. Is it the last one? No, there's one still left in the deck. He has the Great Wall, so a very strong technology to get for him, especially, of course, if he has even a tactic for them. And he is developing them immediately, which could be a sign that he indeed has a tactic. Also, he is going for them, even though he could have also gone for a coal, and that is, of course, a sign that he indeed has some good tactic. He has the defensive army, and with that he could really be quite threatening over the next turn. So let's see if he will even go for coal, or if he just is fine playing in bronze mines, plus the one production from the International Trade Agreement, and is maybe even not going for the coal at all. From what I've seen from him as gameplay, I wouldn't be surprised, even though with all of those yellow cards. Oh, but I indeed called it somehow. He is just skipping the coal here, just saying, I'm fine with playing in bronze mines, I have some civil actions, I will get some yellow cards, and maybe I want to go for some military and don't waste any time building up a bit of production here. So an interesting choice. It would have only cost him one civil action, but he probably would have missed out on one of those yellow cards, maybe wants to have all of them. And yeah, it's just willing to miss out on the coal here. But as I said, from what I've seen from him and his play style, he is sometimes very willing to just stay in bronze mines if he thinks that will put him still in a fine position. Also, he's upgrading one more warrior to swordsman. That means that at the next turn he could maybe declare war and build a cannon. I guess he could have done it anyway, also with still upgrading, but still he goes up to 23 strength now. Eepogi seeds and opens the Dark Ages, so my guess with Kyshantry not using the breakthrough was right here. There's indeed a Dark Ages in the deck, and some science is now lost for every player. Eepogi still has just enough science left to go for the Justice system. We'll go for the Suez Canal. Let's see what colony he will have. He might already finish the Suez Canal at the next turn. Now it's Kyshantry's turn. He will increase his population. Goes for Knight, is now at 20 strength. Destroys a lab. Builds a warrior, is now at 24 strength. Is actually willing to do quite some sacrifices, just making sure that he is the strongest. He has only seeded one of those events, but he has, of course, knowledge with Nostradamus, and him doing those things might really be an indicator that there could be some bad stuff coming in those 4H2 events. He is then now able to get a copy of Rifleman and a Patriotism, but he's now playing at only +1 science production, which could be limiting for him. Wanderlust seeds, and the autonomous territory is revealed, which he is able to win for 9. And he has to send quite a lot of units away. Let's see if he can do a nice transition. I mean, he has to transition out of Jan Žižka anyways. Let's see how he will be able to do that. Has now also a very strong amount of civil and military actions. Let's also see what he will take from the colony. He takes some additional resources, which he certainly can use, even though interesting that he doesn't take additional science. Maybe he has some immediate use for those resources. Otherwise, it looks to me like the science could also have been the right choice, but let's see, and let's take a look at his turn. He will increase his population a bunch of times. He's actually willing to destroy a farm. Maybe doesn't really need it for now, but soon actually might need it again when he loses the yellow tokens to the end of the age. Is actually willing to just build lots of knights. And I think that kind of has to mean that he has the Hussars tactic and maybe now be at a fine amount of strength with Jan Žižka. But I think he really needs to have the Hussars tactic in order for that to be worth it. He actually goes for the warfare, so we might actually see it immediately, and he indeed has it. Is now 22 strength. Will he go for Antoni Gaudi or wait for one of the other leaders? There is still Maria Theresa and Nobel left. I guess both of those leaders might be a bit stronger potentially in the situation. In Antoni Gaudi, he's taking the selective breeding. Could be partly a hate draft. Kyshantry hasn't a food solution yet. And Wanderlust, while of course it could be useful for him, is that low in science that he can't easily go for selective breeding as in a way to avoid famine. And then he takes the opera and a copy of Cavalryman. And actually also the scientific method, but he's now very low in science, so not taking the science, I guess he needed it to build all of those units. Maybe he was afraid of being in danger of an aggression. Now he's just 2 cards in hand, can defend against Kyshantry. But yeah, I think the science also would have been extremely helpful for him. A440 is actually going for war now, so he has this nice defensive army, a great wall setup, and he's choosing Eepogi as the target here. And it's a war with technology. A440, thanks to the reserves, can build another cannon. Goes for another upgrade to his farms to make sure that he gets a lot of food income in age 3. Builds another arena with the urban growth before he will lose it to the end of the age. Takes the strategy, the efficient upgrade, and the reserve, so gets some strong yellow cards again. Let's see, Eepogi. I mean, it depends a little bit on what he gets with the Suez Canal, but he doesn't have really some free population, so I guess also he is missing some resources to, for example, threaten 2 cannons. Kyshantry could have gone for rifleman, and then has a lot of military actions, could have some tactics, so I guess Kyshantry wouldn't have been a good target. And Wanderlust maybe could have been, but he has very low science, so maybe Eepogi could be the best target, but Wanderlust maybe could have been an interesting target at this as well. Now age 3 starts. Eepogi goes for Maria Theresa, so Wanderlust will now only be able to go for Nobel. He is finishing the Suez Canal, and it looks like he got a yellow token colony. Yes, indeed, the vast territory too. Develops the organized religion, spending some science now before he will lose now quite a bunch. Will lose the justice system plus all of the science, but with Maria and the revolutionary idea, he might get some science back. But nonetheless, it's not a great situation to be in for him. Now it's Kyshantry's turn. He just got some additional draws from the Colossus, but see, it's an H2 card for now. And there's indeed a big strength event in there, the Politics of Strength, now giving A440 some additional draws. And he looks really threatening now, because he might now already have drawn some good H3 aggressions or even some wars. Eepogi will miss out in his next draw step, which also isn't ideal for him. Kyshantry having to disband a warrior in order to be able to go for a cannon, getting even a bigger bonus from Napoleon now. He's even disbanding another warrior. It looks like he might have something like mobile artillery available or potentially fortifications, but mobile artillery would be a lot better, and he has indeed a mobile artillery. He's now at 31 strength, takes the urban growth, the wave of nationalism, the military theory, and I mean, he's at 0+1, so why he doesn't need that lab. He can now just play on 0 science from now on, and can just go for another cannon, putting him at 39. He has had some Colossus draws. If there's an aggression, he can maybe go for an aggression at the next turn, and plays on 0 science from now on. Might be fine with the military, but culture-wise, we will have to see if maybe being that low in science could be a disadvantage for him at some point. Now it's Wanderlust's turn. He will increase his population, goes for Nobel, which helps him a little bit in the strength, builds a religion, takes the reserves and the efficient upgrade. And now that we are at the beginning of age 3 and at the end of the 4th player's turn, we can take a look at the overview. Culture-wise, it's relatively close. The A440 is a little bit behind. And yeah, at the moment, of course, this game is a bit dictated by some military pressure that is going on. Eepogi losing a lot of science to the war is quite a bit behind, and now Kyshantry having even more strength than A440, but A440 being the one who got the Politics of Strength, but also Kyshantry already had some additional draws with the Colossus. So because of their military position at the moment, both A440 and Kyshantry might be in a potentially better position, but Wanderlust still having lots of civil actions. If he gets tanks or something and can stabilize the military, it could be fine, but for now he has some famine issues, and I'm not sure if he could not be in big danger military-wise. Same is true for Eepogi. I think the yellow token colony was of big help for him. He might still have some fine amount of science to work with, but he will lose now the justice system, will play on very low civil action, so I think both Wanderlust and Eepogi are in a position that could get quite tricky. On the other hand, Kyshantry, of course, went down to 0 science production, gets some passive culture income from the Wander and the religion, but also has no food income, so he has 2 areas where he is really badly prepared. So let's see if the strength push that he is going for alone will be enough to make up for that. I mean, if he gets some fine aggressions like a plunder for some additional food or something, maybe he will be fine, but that's also a bit tricky. While A440 has not the greatest resource production, but some fine amount of civil actions, will be able to go for the strategy. So I think while he's a bit behind in culture, his position just seems the most balanced. He has the strength pressure while still having a solid amount of economy. He has the chance to get Pierre with those 2 bread circuses. So I think with my guess, I will guess him as the winner. And that's the question, Kyshantry, with his position. Is the military pressure enough to make up for it? But I think also if Eepogi and Wanderlust are just more in danger of getting hit by a wall at some point from A440, so I think I will guess Kyshantry as the second position. Maybe Wanderlust as the third, and Eepogi as the fourth, but it's not clear. Depends heavily on how much Kyshantry can get out of the strength advantage that he's having for now. If he doesn't really get a lot out of it, then out of the sudden he might be in a bad position. But he has some additional draws. He was willing to do some sacrifices in order to go for that, so I will guess him as the second, and then it's hard to say which one, Wanderlust or Eepogi, have the worst position, but Wanderlust has those many civil actions which could be a huge advantage for him, so I will go with him as the third place. But let's see how it will play out. A440 stealing 4 signs and a justice system from Eepogi. Has an aggression, a blunder that he will play against Wanderlust, stealing 5 resources. That helps him, of course, a lot. And now we see him, he doesn't really need the coal. Get some resources from the blunder, had some other plans anyway, and with that, can just play without a coal mine. For now, goes for the air forces. A bit lucky, of course, for him that he gets that immediately. Will help him a lot for his strength push. Takes the architecture and the urban growth. Eepogi offers the military alliance to Wanderlust, so both of them get 3 additional strength, and both of them get a little bit of help for the big strength numbers that are A440 and Kyshantry are pulling up right now. Eepogi will elect Maria Theresa, uses her immediately to increase his population 2 times, builds a cavalryman and upgrade, or builds an additional farm even that will allow him to increase his population again at the next turn, but is willing to destroy this lab in order to go for an additional swordsman, putting him at 30 strength, maybe at least being somewhat safe from the aggression from Kyshantry potentially. Let's see, will Kyshantry also be able to get an aggression off? He is going for a plunder. Interestingly, though, he is going against Eepogi here, and not against Wanderlust, who the aggression maybe would have been more guaranteed to hit. Probably he saw still some chances that Eepogi will not be able to defend, and the thing is, Kyshantry doesn't have he has 2 food. No, Wanderlust doesn't have any food, and maybe Kyshantry just valued it really highly, getting some additional food, because that would allow him to activate the frugality, so he maybe went for the aggression that isn't safe, but he gets punished a bit for it. The blunder is not successful, and for now he doesn't get a successful aggression off. He will then get the Manhattan Project. He has low in population, has no signs, so that's just a nice way to get some additional strength, so I think that looks like a good pick. He then builds a step, takes the engineering and the modern infantry. Maybe he also just wants to accelerate the game a little bit with his weak economy. Or maybe also deny some technologies. Wanderlust will get the reserves, the patriotism, develops the scientific method, goes for an upgrade, goes even for another upgrade, is now at 8 science production, but for the moment is very much behind in strength. And also has famine, so is falling a bit behind in culture. And there's the first war, A440 going for a war with culture against Eepogi. Eepogi can potentially develop riflemen, but can't really go for that much. Wanderlust has all of those yellows. It's missing 1 science to go into tanks, so I guess both Eepogi and Wanderlust could have been a fine target. A440 deciding here to go against Eepogi, will develop the strategy, could have also gone for the military theory, but maybe has something else to do with the civil actions. Will build an additional air force, takes the satellites, the democracy and the patriotism. Could even do a revolution to democracy at the next turn, especially if he maybe doesn't have a lot more military heavy cards in hand. Eepogi will increase his population, goes up to 6 science, takes the military theory in hand, takes the revolutionary idea in hand, but isn't really going for that much strength, will lose a bunch of culture, and it's now really not looking great for him. And there's another war happening, but a war over territory. Kyshantry is going against Wanderlust. He will be able to finish the Manhattan Project, destroys even a farm in order to build another religion for some additional culture reduction, I guess, but if he just would have kept the farm for 1 turn longer, he could have used the frugality at the next turn. I guess his hope is that he will of course now steal a lot of yellow tokens, and he can be confident unless Wanderlust resigns, but with Eepogi just losing a war over culture, I think it would be the wrong decision here from Wanderlust to resign. He might get that many yellow tokens that he will be able to just get 2 more populations out, with just being able to increase his population 2 times for 3 foods. So with that, maybe just getting some more happy faces. Maybe there's also something like prosperity coming, of course, but also just to get a bit more culture reduction might be a fine choice. Now it's Wanderlust's turn. He will offer an international tourism to Eepogi. Eepogi getting 2 and Wanderlust 3 culture reduction. Interesting that Eepogi accepts it, but no, I mean, it could still give him some culture reduction, can maybe still have some hopes to finish before Kyshantry if things go right for him. Wanderlust will take the professional sports, develops it, builds one, takes the tanks, the revolutionary idea, and at the next turn has enough science to go into tanks, but he will lose lots of yellows and will have some big famine issues. A440 steals 31 culture from Eepogi. Let's see if he has another war or another aggression. Another aggression, a blunder against Wanderlust. He is now very low in resources, so yeah, that's not looking great for him, but he has at least a lot of yellows in hand. A440 again getting lots of resources, doesn't really need a coal here, goes for another bread and circus. Pierre is late so far, that's of course a leader that he might like to get. He's now going for computers. Will he go for Sid Meier? I think it might be better to leave himself open for Pierre here. Also there's still Steve Jobs as a potentially strong leader with computers available, so he goes for 2 upgrades, but he is actually going for Sid Meier. I guess Wanderlust just went for professional sports, so there's just maybe a high chance that Pierre could be taken away, and Sid Meier, of course, will also generate him a fine amount of culture, and maybe he can go for the internet. Which, of course, would also be strong with Pierre, but Sid Meier can take now for 1 civil action. Well, he doesn't know where they get Pierre, so he is already in a position that looks solid, so maybe it's the best to not take too many risks here. Eepogi will now go for Gandhi, is now a bit safer, but a lot of damage has already been done. He goes for the military theory, destroys the lab, builds a swordsman, is now at 43 strength. Kyshantry steals 4 yellow tokens from Wanderlust. And here's a war over culture even. Let's see if Wanderlust will resign, but with Eepogi being that low in culture, he might again play on. And now we can see that despite having destroyed a farm, he can now, thanks to stealing 4 yellow tokens, just increase his population 2 times. Plays the wave of nationalism for 2 resources, building, which allows him to actually build another cannon and knight, going up to 62 strength, takes the reserves and even another copy of reserves. He's now even stronger than A440 for now. Wanderlust doesn't resign, instead goes for the tanks, plays patriotism, plays the reserves, goes for an upgrade so that he doesn't have 8 famine, and then upgrades a knight to tanks. But he will lose a lot of culture, and it's not looking too great for him now. Takes the military build-up to at least get a bit more strength at the following turns, and the engineering genius. And there's no Pierre on the row yet. The game might end before his next turn or the age, so A440 maybe having been right about his decision on taking Sid Meier here. And refugees are revealed. For now, Kyshantry is the strongest, Wanderlust the weakest, so some culture is lost. For Wanderlust, A440 now being the strongest again with developing the satellites for free, also develops the architecture for free, has a potentially very strong impact of progress. Actually is destroying a mine here in order to build another computer, goes for Sid Meier, has now 12 culture reduction, takes the revolutionary idea and the endowment for the arts. And with the patriotism, he has just enough resources, or even 1 more than he would need to go for another defensive army tactic with the Great Wall, because of course he has also to be a little bit careful that not out of the sudden he could be a target from a war from Kyshantry, but Kyshantry will lose Napoleon, so probably A440 should be relatively safe here. Eepogi takes the movies, builds one, and with that is producing 11 culture for now. Because of Wanderlust getting hit by another war, he could now be in a shape to at least finish at the 3rd position. Wanderlust going down to 3 culture right now. Kyshantry ceding. National Pride is revealed. He gets 5 additional culture. So for now he has again a bit of a lead before A440. Let's see if A440 with his backer position for the impacts that I think he has will be able to catch up, or if Kyshantry might actually be with the culture lead that he is having at the moment, maybe be able to win the game. He is taking the Red Cross, is building a religion. Also, let's see if Wanderlust will end the age or not. He is going for Churchill, increases his population, takes the efficient upgrade, the urban growth, elects Churchill, plays the military build-up, and he's not ending the age, and I guess it probably is the right decision, because when he ends the age now, of course he is still in a vulnerable position, but he needs to hope for something, and maybe a war from A440 against Eepogi could be something to hope for, just some aggressions against Eepogi. Yeah, so he just maybe needs the game to continue in order to be able to hope for something. If he just ends the game, I think he's just too much behind. So he plays the military build-up, uses Churchill, builds up some more strength, and is now at 55, so actually relatively safe, and can maybe now hope that there could be some aggressions happening against Eepogi. But, ooh, there are no aggressions happening for now, but there's actually a war with culture declared from A440 against kyshantry of all of the people, and of course kyshantry at this point is definitely the biggest contender for A440 for the win, and if A440 has a way of actually defeating kyshantry in a war, then yeah, of course he needs to go against him, and then it looks probably relatively good for him to win this game. He will play the patriotism, and as I said last turn, he can go for another defensive army tactic. I even said it because of saying that he needs to be careful to not get hit by a war, but of course with having the patriotism, that many military actions, he can also just go for a war himself again. I thought that maybe the game could end, but there's one H3 card now left, and with playing the revolutionary idea, he can now go for the democracy, plays the endowment for 2 culture, and gets the professional sports. And Pierre actually being the last card of H3, H4 will start now. Eepogi builds a step of the Red Cross from kyshantry, builds another movie, gets some big culture reduction, and I mean if kyshantry loses a bunch of culture, who knows, if maybe he could come back. He then takes the civil service and the fundamentalism. Now it's kyshantry's turn, he will destroy a mine, builds a cannon, destroys another mine, builds a knight, goes for Pierre, elects Pierre, plays the reserves for food, builds a step of the Red Cross. So he is at least able to go up to 66 strength, but he still will lose a bunch of culture, will get at least the Olympic Games to the next turn. Wanderlust seeds, the arms industry is revealed. He can now use Churchill again to build some more military, interestingly. He is willing to use Churchill, maybe it could have been fine to just try getting the culture, but maybe the strength will make the difference between being able to defend against an aggression or not. He will go for some more food. And also he needs to do something about his happy faces, as he has an uprising for now, is destroying the religion actually, and then with the urban growth building another professional sports. But yeah, it's not looking great for him at this point. A440 steals 18 culture from kyshantry. I think that's not that big of a hit, that Eepogi has some really big hopes of overtaking kyshantry here, but let's see what will happen. Independence Declaration is revealed, which will hit Eepogi. And then A440 can build a step of the Red Cross, goes for the professional sports, doesn't have enough science to go for a Nobel Prize, but can set himself up for impacts a bit better with going for 2 upgrades from bread and circuses to professional sports, improving his competition, architecture, and also making impact of strength more safe, and I'm maybe also getting more happy faces. I didn't see whether he had the full amount. The prosperity is revealed. It might help kyshantry building the necessary steps, but it also helps Eepogi building another step of the Red Cross. He will disband a swordsman, builds even another movie, is now at 19 culture production. And then copies the Hussar's tactic, builds another farm, maybe just prepares for some different impacts here. Kyshantry will use the Olympic Games, finishes the Red Cross, builds another farm, plays the reserves to not have famine. And then Wanderlust doesn't play another impact, uses Churchill again, interestingly, instead of using him for culture. Maybe there's indeed impact of competition in there, could be the case at least. We have 1 impact seeded by green here, and so another one here, so green, which is A440, has seeded 2, all of the other players have seeded 1 event. And before the final impacts, things are relatively decided yet, but the thing that is still somewhat close is the 1st and 2nd position. Kyshantry only being 18 culture despite losing the war, so the war and having the possibility to go for one maybe being very important for A440. But he seems very nicely prepared for impact, so I would be surprised if kyshantry can catch up to A440 here, but let's see what the final impacts will have to say. And the first impact is the impact of Wonders. Kyshantry is able to catch up some points, is only 12 culture behind. Then we have the impact of competition that is indeed in there. A440 very nicely prepared for that, also with going for those upgrades to his arenas. And Wanderlust, I mean, he gets plus 30 actually, so I could imagine that he was the one who seeded it, because he was really always willing to go for more upgrades with Churchill instead of using him for culture. And if there's also impact of strength, he I mean, the gap is still very big. I think even with that impact, he doesn't really have any hopes. There is actually impact of strength. So A440 has now such a big lead that I think his position is not really in any danger. Now Wanderlust is even closer to Eepogi than kyshantry is to A440. We have the impact of progress. That's a very strong one for A440, very bad for kyshantry, and basically for all of his opponents, not really a great impact. And the last one is the impact of government, also a strong one for A440. Kyshantry having plus 18, Eepogi plus 16, and then Wanderlust plus 22, getting a bit closer to Eepogi, but at the end, it's not really close for any of the positions. A440 being able to win the first game of the finals. Congratulations to him. kyshantry finishing second, Eepogi third, and Wanderlust fourth. So for my guess, I was wrong about the placement of Eepogi and Wanderlust here. Yeah, so an interesting game, quite a military-heavy one with both A440 and kyshantry going for some military push. A440, I mean, it's always a bit lucky, of course, if you get a defensive army with the Great Wall, but he still played it very nicely. And also the decision of skipping the coal is a decision that you have to be brave enough to do it. And I think it turned out to be the completely correct one for A440. He actually has not a single mine at the end of the game now. So here his good military instincts definitely, I think, guided him into the right decision, just skipping the coal and instead getting an additional yellow card. And yeah, also finishing Kremlin while being on bronze mines with having access to the two engineering geniuses, and then just having that great wall with the defensive army tactic, of course, can carry you quite a long while. Kyshantry also going for a big military push. He did some sacrifices for it, but yeah, at least he managed to finish at the second position, so I guess it paid at least somewhat off for him. And then for both Eepogi and Wanderlust, Eepogi then was a bit safer behind Gandhi, but both were in a position where they were very, very vulnerable. And in such a situation, of course, it always depends a little bit which player gets hit more heavily by aggressions and wars. Both players did get hit by wars and aggressions, so it was somewhat equally divided. Wanderlust maybe getting hit by a little bit more, and with that, and also getting Gandhi, Eepogi at the end finishes third, while Wanderlust finishes in the last position. Alright, with that we are at the end of taking a look at the first of the 4-player games. I hope it was an interesting watch for you, and yeah, with that, as I say, thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.